My mother is disabled due to a neurological disease. She was diagnosed in her late 30s, and I remember that she was sick and needed help. I used to really look up to her as a supermom who could overcome any obstacle. That was until my father died. My father died over 10 years ago when I was still in high school. At that time my brother and I lived with my parents. I got a job when I was in high school after he left, cleaning the house, mowing the grass, buying food with money from work, paying bills when I could, the minimum wage is low, and cooking dinner for my mom and myself almost every night. My brother was rarely at home, except to sleep or because he needed money. Over the years, my brother has been in and out of prison dozens and dozens of times for everything from drunk driving to drug possession to stealing from our mother to assault. He is currently incarcerated. No one mentions him or expects anything of him, except my mother who, in violation of a court order for her own protection that she herself asked for, sends him money and speaks to him weekly as well as sends letters. Back to my father's death, a 7-month bout with illness. Almost 2 years after my father's death, I graduated from high school and went to college out of state. I sent money to my mom when I was in college, and I distinctly remember, for example, using my scholarship I got in December to buy Christmas presents for my mom and brother, because I knew they wouldn't have anything if I won't buy. No one reciprocated, but I did not expect this. To be honest, I didn't care either until it became the norm over the next decade. That very Christmas, I was barely 18 years old, and I was collecting pennies to buy a cheap refrigerator after I returned home for the winter holidays with gifts, only to realize that there was no food in the house. My brother, in a drug-fueled rage, tore down the Christmas tree I had bought and decorated and threatened to kill himself if I didn't give him the money because no one loved him, and that would prove that I cared. It is important to note that even during this time, my mother continued to let my brother, who became a criminal, back to the house. I'll try to skip my college and graduate years, but suffice it to say that I met my current husband and spent less and less time at home. When I was at home or when my husband and I were visiting, it was like this: clean my mom's house, buy mom food, cook for mom, take care of my mom. I was and remain very firm with my mother that I would not let my brother in my life as he threatened to kill me over the prescription cough syrup, threw me down the stairs and broke down the door to get to me, and some of the money I had at the time. I have no doubt that he will try to harm my child, my husband or me in order to get what he wants. He told me he would find me and he would teach me a lesson for his perception that I wronged him for not giving him money, and I have zero contact with him. I have blocked all numbers that have anything to do with him, including friends he calls from outside the prison. P.S. My mother let him take my number from her phone. I told my mom for years that I didn't want to have my brother in my life until he stopped using drugs for at least 1 year. To date, he is unable to do so. He stole tens of thousands of dollars from her. She always says she won't let him back into her house, but she eventually forgives him and the cycle repeats. The next year, when he was released again, she told me in no uncertain terms that he would not live with her, but admits that she keeps in touch, sends him money, and thinks it is the devil in him that makes him addicted. He will return. I offered to help my mom move closer to me since I live in many states. My husband and I even asked the realtor to come out and start the process of registering our house so we could find a house with space for my mom. My only stipulation was that she not drag my brother into my son's life. She categorically refused. She also refused to go to nursing homes, despite the fact that I went to her of my own free will and received excellent recommendations from her doctors. Now that she had surgery this week, my family is out of the slums. To be honest, I'm outraged by this. I had people who couldn't even send me a mutual Christmas card and told me that I was neglecting my mother, refusing to take time off from work and go to her place to take care of her. They don't care that I don't have days off and that I will most likely lose my job. One even stated that I wouldn't put groceries on my desk. I wouldn't work for such an employer. It's easy to say those words, but say it to my hungry baby. They said, "Who do you think took care of you as a baby?" And frankly, it hurts me. Sometimes you have to learn how to deal with life. You can't just ignore it because getting on with life means losing your job. Walking away from my toddler in his growing up years and taking care of my mother, I guess? You can probably tell at this point that I'm fed up. I am in a stalemate when literally the only surviving family members tell me to quit my job, my family, my young child to take care of my mom and help her. They also refuse to give a timeline, saying it will be as long as she needs it. I am expected to take care of her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no questions asked. I also feel strongly that they resent my mother for asking them to do me a service. Even though I have explained many times that I offered her to stay with us and have the operation here, at no cost to her, mind you. And she refused. In response, they tell me that she has the right to be close to her friends. I also tried to explain that by bowing to her at every call. They give her an opportunity, but they don't want to hear it. They don't seem to hear me when I try to explain that. For example, helping her get out of the physical therapy room a week and a half before her doctor's recommendation gives her an opportunity, and ultimately hurts her independence. She is used to everyone doing everything for her. For example, during the last visit she was very upset that I did not take her to Walmart, because she had to go there almost before the baby went to bed. It was not emergency. She wanted to look around. My mother, in all this confusion, has taken the position that although she doesn't want me to lose my job, a good daughter should take care of her mother. Frankly, I am very hostile to this statement, because my mother did not call me on my birthday before my father died. I tried to build some kind of relationship with my son. I always try to chat with them or talk on the phone. And in the last 12 years I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times she called me just to tell me about me, or my son, or ask how we are doing. If she does call, there is always an ulterior motive, money for my brother or for her because she gave my brother everything. I'm on the edge. I can't work full-time, take care of my family, and expect to hear several times a week how bad a person I am for refusing to give up everything I've worked so hard to take care of mine. Mother. No matter what, I love my mom. My husband and his family saw it unfold and several people remarked, "Why are you even trying?" Meaning trying to schedule calls so she can talk / see my son. I invited her to my house earlier this month, scheduled plane tickets, airport assistance, etc. Just to watch her play on her phone or spend time playing with the dog instead of reading a book to my little one who just wanted her attention. Today, as if the last straw was needed, I called to check on her and she stated that she was going home against the doctor's orders because her dog needed her, because the dog was sick. First, he has a very minor skin condition that is almost 100% cured thanks to her friend giving him a prescribed ointment. Secondly, my little one got sick this week, meaning he didn't go to kindergarten for 3 days. And even after I told her about it, she never called to find out how he was. Just like she never called to check on him when he came down with the flu last year, or when he had a mysterious week and a half illness earlier this year that resulted in 4 doctor visits and a temperature of 104 degrees. I can't take it anymore. I am literally writing this as a last resort. My husband tells me not to talk to anyone. That's the whole family I have left except for one paternal aunt, because he sees me cry when hurtful comments and guilt come into play. He sees me trying to hide it from my child. But then I feel like I'm giving them what they want, right? Look at little Miss Potato, such a bad person and so inept at dealing with life. She just chose to ignore us all. But I can't defend myself all day in front of extended family members whom I've seen for over 10 years. And in some cases over 2 decades. Nothing I say will ever be good enough. I was told in no uncertain terms that I was a terrible person because I refused to leave my husband and young child and move across the county to take care of my mother. Postscript, I am not subject to the FMLA. My employer is not large enough and there is no comparable law in my state. I have 1 day of vacation left due to my son getting sick earlier this year. My husband gets almost 3 times as many days off, so took many more days to take care of him. In general, I do not want to lose my job or look for another one. It's a good job, it's just limited to a small company. She refused to move in with me. Either my husband and I are building a mother-in-law, or we are moving to a bigger house, any aid agency or nursing home. She hesitates about allowing housework, but contradicts herself on the matter, telling me that Susie can help her if she needs anything, or that she has friends she can call, or, more often than not, She does well and can take care of herself. She wants help, but only when she wants it and only on her own terms. She told me that she would not end her relationship with my brother. I managed to get her to agree to a consultation after my brother attacked her, stole her car and pawned all her appliances. She moved to a domestic violence shelter but declined to press charges. This happened when I was 7 months pregnant, and when I refused to drive 20+ hours in a car. I was told essentially the same thing that I am being accused of now. She justifies my brother's behavior. He hooked up with the devil and he can't leave him. I've talked to the Adult Protective Services counselors and it all comes down to the fact that she's an adult. She can make her own decisions. Her doctors, although they seem to agree that she may need help taking care of herself, refuse to state that she is unable to take care of herself. Since my wife and I got married 3 years ago, things have been off. I know that people grow and change with time, but around our wedding, my wife changed drastically. She bleached her dark brown hair blonde right before the ceremony. And I honestly thought I was in the wrong church for a split second when she came down the aisle. We moved into our house right after the honeymoon, and she went into full domestic mode. We'd shared cleaning duties before, but once we moved into the house, she became insistent on doing everything before I could even get to it. Since this is our first house, I thought it was some kind of homeowner nesting thing, but it never stopped. Her hair color is none of my business and I think most people would be happy not to have to clean. So I honestly didn't really think much of either of those things at the time. The big thing has always been how closed off she got after the wedding. When we were dating, she'd tell me long rambling stories about her feelings and rant to me when she was upset and all that. And I liked hearing about what was going on inside her head. After the wedding, that stopped pretty abruptly. If I ask her how her day is, she will only ever tell me that it was fine or super. She doesn't talk to me about her feelings anymore, ever, even when I explicitly ask, "How do you feel about X?" She also stopped telling me about anything important that happened to her. About a year after we got married, her grandfather died. Did she tell me she'd lost her grandfather? No. She told me that she had to go to a conference for work on the other side of the country, which I thought nothing of. On the second day she was gone. Her older brother texted me to tell me that my in-laws had really missed seeing me at the funeral. When I called her to ask why in the ever-loving hell she didn't tell me, and then lied about it, all she would say was, "I didn't want to trouble you. You have a lot on your plate." After that, she went on a couple of spontaneous family trips. She's really close to her family, so the first time she said she was going camping with her brother at their alma mater. I didn't think a lot of it other than to be slightly disappointed and confused that I wasn't invited, because her brother's cool and the three of us go camping together a lot. But the second time, I started hearing alarm bells. I'd like to say I'm a more secure man, but after the second spontaneous family trip, my wheels started spinning and I started to think that maybe she was cheating. This was a weird insecurity in the back of my mind for a while, since she wasn't showing any other big signs of cheating. She wasn't guarded about her phone and hadn't changed her routine / appearance. A few weeks ago, she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon about it until I asked her how many weeks along she was, and she nonchalantly said about 12 or 13. She'd been pregnant for like 3 months before she even bothered to tell me. She's not really showing at all, and she doesn't usually drink, so I had been completely in the bloody dark. I honestly hadn't even suspected. That was kind of it for me. I was sure she was cheating, and that it wasn't my kid. I thought there was no possible way that a woman would keep her pregnancy a secret from her husband for 3 months. So I snooped. Yes, I know I was wrong, but I wanted proof that she'd been having an affair before I moved out. One of my best buddies from college is a divorce attorney, and when I asked him what I should do, he sent me the info for a key logger. I installed it on my wife's laptop and was prepared for the worst. Now, I feel like what I found is somehow worse than her cheating. I didn't find any steamy messages, but I found out that she keeps a diary in a Word document that she writes in every day. I know I should have just stopped once I knew she wasn't cheating, but once I saw my name in her diary, I couldn't stop. I read all of it. All 7 separate documents, going back to way before we'd even met. Turns out she's not cheating. She's depressed, hates herself, and has absolutely no trust in me. All of the stuff I've been confused and bothered by has some kind of sad, self-loathing explanation. She hates having blonde hair, but she writes, I know he'd divorce me if I went back to being a brunette. Because wives are supposed to be blonde almost every week. The wives are supposed to be thing is tangled up in everything. She thinks wives are supposed to be quiet, which is why she doesn't talk to me anymore. She thinks wives are supposed to make things easier for their husbands, not harder. Which is why she didn't tell me when her grandfather died. It just goes on and on and on. She didn't tell me when she got a huge promotion and a raise because he'd leave me in a heartbeat if he knew I made more money than he does. Men can't handle that. It hurt to know that she thinks of me as some kind of one-dimensional 1950s husband. And I've been racking my brain to think of anything I could have done to make her think this way. What I can't handle is that she'd lied about the big stuff. I honestly don't know if I can forgive her for not telling me about the miscarriages. The spontaneous family trips were actually her miscarrying 2 of our children, one at 5 weeks, the other at about 10. She went and stayed with her parents while she was recuperating, and her brother and sister came to support her. But not me. I didn't get to be there for her, because she thinks I would leave her immediately if I knew that she'd killed our children. She's convinced that she caused both miscarriages because she smoked pot for a long time before we got married. For what it's worth, it sounds like her family tried both times to get her to tell me, but she wouldn't. She finally told me about this pregnancy because her parents threatened to tell me she didn't. I'm just absolutely confused. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just so baffled because everything she says about me in her diary is insanely nice. She goes on for pages and pages about how much she loves me and how she thinks I'm her soulmate and how she would do anything for me. I just can't understand why she thinks that I would leave her. Knowing that she's spent the last 3 years walking on eggshells around me, convinced that I would leave her at the drop of a hat is just so confusing and awful. I feel like our marriage is some kind of lie. The woman I thought was self-confident and ready to take on the world is actually full of self-loathing and really, really depressed. I don't know her at all. She's been suffering silently with depression long before we met. She has no faith in me, no trust. She thinks that every hug and kiss I give her and every I love you I say is a lie. I just don't know what to do. She obviously needs serious help, but I don't know how to get it for her. I can't tell her that I read her diary. If she has zero trust in me now, I can't even imagine what she'd think if she knew if I read 6 years worth of her private thoughts. I feel like I need to get my in-laws on board somehow, but I don't know what to say to them. I know I can't ignore this, but I feel like any move is the wrong move. I met this guy in January and he became my boyfriend in February. Comes March, the world goes down the drain and we decided to move in together for the time of the pandemic. A few weeks ago, he shows me a post where this guy is challenged to an arm wrestling competition by his GF. The guy didn't seem to have any sort of training / workout, whereas his girlfriend did. I commented he might have a surprise. My boyfriend started educating me on biology and how men are stronger than women. I told him there were way too many factors to take into consideration to make such a broad comment. I have been doing weightlifting for 2 years and my boyfriend has never seen a gym in his life, so I used us as an example. That was a big mistake. He got really defensive and condescending, and made comments like, "That's cute." I just let it go. Fast forward to yesterday. He's playing some game with his friend, online, and I can clearly hear him talk about me. Well, curiosity killed the cat. At first it's all pretty and my ego is bursting, but then he says I'm delusional because I think I'm stronger than him. Pause. Seriously? I know I'm weak, but not weaker than a girl. So later, I decide to call him on his BS. I asked him if he wanted to come work out with me the next day, this morning, so he can show me how strong he is. He accepted and I was happy because I had been dying to bring him and initiate him to something I'm passionate about. So, this morning, we went to my friend's garage. My region allows groups of 10 or less and we wipe everything. I told him we're gonna do deadlifts. It's my favorite exercise and I was already planning to test my personal best, so it was perfect. My friend was there cause he corrects my form and it's been our Sunday ritual since COVID-19. We started light and slowly worked our way up, doing the same number of reps as the other. Comes 185, his form starts to crumble, so we made him go lighter. But 185 really isn't that much for me, so I kept stacking the plates. He looked very supportive and impressed the whole time. I ended up beating my personal best at 265. I was ecstatic and so were they. When we got in the car, he was very silent. I assumed he was just tired. We got home and that's when he exploded and asked me if I was proud of myself. Apparently, I humiliated him in front of my friend. I apologized. I didn't realize he was feeling that way. He got angry and said it really changed the way he saw me, like I'm less of a woman now. He stormed to the basement. I started collecting my things. But now I'm wondering if I should have been reading between the lines and stopped at 190 or something. Or just dropped it and never suggested we work out together. I knew very well I was stronger than him, but I just had to prove it to him. Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this.